Ribbit. So today I want to do a pop function versus pop macro, I guess. Notice you can kind of see my cursor at the front blinking and the end blinking versus the last video. So I might as well Control X, Control F, Control A, Control K. Oh, let's turn on the keycast first before I forget. So Control G to get out of there. Alt X, keycast mode. And then I won't put the top one up there, just the bottom, because I think the top one might be what was making the screen blink last time. So Control X, Control F, Control A, and Control K to get rid of that. And then even on Windows, I can do like a /.emacs to get to my home folder, I guess. And then Control S for cursor. And then right here's where I'm setting the cursor. So I made it a little bit thicker, and I changed the color right here. I also have a theme, and so I have to load the theme before I change the cursor color, or the theme will change it to whatever color it chooses. And then also, for whatever reason, no, I haven't had this problem even on Windows 10 in the past, but for some reason I couldn't change my cursor thicker, or change it to a box, or change it to an H bar. There's quite a different types of cursors you can use, but no matter what, I couldn't change it until I set this right here to nil. So this line right here, if you're trying to change your cursor to a box or to an H bar, or just make your bar thicker and it's not working and you're on Windows, then you might want to change this line right here to be nil. I read somewhere it has to do with a screen reader or something, but I can't say that for sure. So Control X, K to kill that window. And then I think I canceled starting Sly. So Alt X Sly to pull up Sly. And then Control X1 to make that full screen, and then hit Control L twice to get rid of the little kitty cat. And then I guess the first thing is to go over prog1 because I'm going to use it. So you have prog1, prog2, prog-n. There's also a prog, but I'll go over that some other time. So prog1's gonna, like if I just say first and second and run that, then prog1 or prog2, prog-n are gonna evaluate all their arguments, but prog1's gonna return just the first one. So maybe you can't see that as well as if I was to say like prog1 and then say print first, let's say, and then print second. And notice the indentation changes. So I'd say whichever one it's going to return, then everything after that will be indented differently. So notice it says it prints first, prints second, but it's actually just returning first. And so if I also use a prog2 here, I guess that's not a prog2, is it? So if I also change that to a prog2 and then give this a third, and once again, you can't see that unless I print these guys. So print, and then not sure why that didn't indent. Oh, because I hit cap locks. Print, and then one more of these guys. And even if I did another one, I guess. Let's just print the fourth one. Then first, second, third, fourth, and it's returning the second one. And then a prog-n just returns the last one. And I guess prog-n is used more often than the prog-1s and 2s for blocks of code that don't have don't allow multiple forms, I guess, or expressions or arguments. I don't know what would be the proper term for that. Don't accept multiple sex p's, let's say. So prog-n could be used with the if, let's say. So if I also say if 0 equals 0, yes, no, so it's going to say yes. But if I also wanted to say something else in here also, like maybe yep, then you need to wrap that into a prog end, let's say. And then even here, you can see it did yep, but you can't tell that it also ran yes, I guess. And without having to take my word for it, I guess we could put a print here, like we were doing before. And so it prints yes and returns yep. And then you could also print this too. And then it's going to say print yes, print yep, and then return yep. Yep, yep. And then maybe we'll pick a global variable to pop, let's say. So I'll start doing the pop functions. Def. And in this case, I'll just use a def r because it's not like I'm going to rerun this. And then just choose a couple of numbers in here. I don't know how many of these things I need. And then now we have a global variable, special variable, whatever you want to call it. Control L to get in the middle. And so let's just first off make a function that won't work. So we'll have a list, let's say, and then this is where prog1 will be useful because I'm going to return the car of the list, and then I'm going to try to set off the list to be the codr of the list. And then now if I also say like pop the list, which we made nums, then it pops one off, but it doesn't really pop it off. It's just actually just grabbing that car. And it almost seems like this should make it like be an error or something to me, but right here the argument of a function is always going to be evaluated, let's say, and therefore it can't get to the name of this. And so I could try to maybe go like this to quote that, but then now it's telling me that nums isn't a list. So I'm going to hit Q to get out of there. So it's not going to work because I actually want to set nums. And when I pass that in, nums is being evaluated. So this right here is not going to work. And in this case, like it's pulling car of a list off of there. And now another thing I can try to do is defun a pop function that will actually work. It kind of took me a while to figure this out, a way to do this. And the first couple times I tried this, the way I was doing it might have worked if I was quoting the input, but it wasn't until I tried to do it this way. So if I'm going to take the car, and for whatever reason, like this right here, the prog1, the car of the list worked. But now if I try to do the car of the list, when I'm trying to set this, it actually doesn't work. And so like Lisp must be doing something. I'll just show. So let's say if I say car list here, which, you know, it worked before. I got to wrap that into prog1, I guess. And then I'm going to set off the symbol value of list and a codr. So let me just copy this because I didn't go over like symbol name. So if I was going to say symbol name is actually what led me to try this, symbol name nums. Maybe I have to quote that. Maybe that's what led me to start quoting that. So I get a symbol name back. And so if I also say symbol value of, I have to quote that, I guess, too. Then see, it's giving me the value of that back. So I'm just going to Control Y to paste back what I had a second ago. And then symbol value of list. So I'm going to get the cutter of that. And then this nil is a constant and this can't be set. This error right here is because I didn't get the symbol value of this right here. That's what's kind of weird. So right here, prog1 car list, I could get the car of a list. And then it did not give me an error when I tried to set this, even though it doesn't work. But for some reason, now I have to put the symbol value to get this. I'm not really sure why it's doing that, but maybe depending on what you're trying to do to something, like Common Lisp is changing, like changing that to be a constant or something. So I'm just going to do the exact same thing, but now all of a sudden I need to use symbol value here also. I think that should work now. Yes, I don't know. I should have hit Control-C-O before I went further. I could have cleared this junk out, but Control-C-Alt-O will just clear everything I've inputted, which I don't want to do. So it's too late now, I guess. And so now I should be able to use that function, pop function of nums. And then notice I'm getting an error. Well, this error basically is not of type symbol. It's because I need to quote this symbol right here. And then now if I check nums, then it pops it off. Now, of course, having to quote some symbol or something that you're passing to a function isn't really the normal way you're going to input stuff into a function. You know, I'm not having to quote things to get stuff out of there if I want to run this right here. So I'd say this is a function that acts kind of strange because I have to quote the input to it. And then the other way I was trying to write this before, which was before I realized I had to quote this, is using like the quoting, the quote and the comma. I think in Scheme it's called quasi-quoting, and then maybe like in Common Lisp, I'm not sure. Like I don't think quasi-quoting came around till Scheme, but just quoting and unquoting. Maybe they just call it quoting because you have your single quote and your back quote, or back tick if you prefer to call it that. But I think in Common Lisp it's usually called like a back quote, and so you can, you know, do something and then whatever, and then if you want to unevaluate whatever, then you put a comma there. So I'm just going to write a same thing like a pop function and just call it BQ for back quote. And then we'll put that, you know, pass in the list. And then do a back tick, say prog1, back quote car, and then unquote list. And then setf the list. Oops. Wow. I didn't even have my fingers in the wrong spot. I just actually typed those guys off one key for some reason just then. And so here, this is quoted, and then I'm unquoting lists and unquoting list and unquoting list here. And then now if I try to use this, pop function BQ with nums, it's going to give me the same error I had earlier probably. Oh, here we go. So now we get to see what it kind of looks like. Yeah, so this is popping this off, and you can see this would not work because the car of this might work because that's 2, but I can't set off this list to the cutter of this list. Let's say this is a constant, let's say. By the time Lisp sees this now, it's going to be a constant. And so this would give me an error if I was trying to eval that, I think. So if I told it to eval this, then compile time errors, form compile time errors, illegal function call. I don't actually see it telling me why it failed. see, Control-C-O there actually worked. I'm going to hit Control-L to bring that back down so we can see what was going on before. And then go to this. And then if I was to quote this, though, last time I did not quote it. Now look, we have a prog1 car nums, setf nums, cdr nums. So this looks correct. So I should be able to eval this. And then notice it gave me the correct thing popped off. And then it actually did pop it off. So that actually works. So we could come back over here, let's say, and then wrap this in an eval. Well, it probably looks better on a new line, maybe. Because maybe you don't want to run around using evals. And then, so now if I was to say, I think I just run the same thing again without the pop. Then we got it there. So now this is working like the other one does. Although now if I don't quote this, I'll probably just get an error because it's not spitting the form out like it was earlier. It's Control-C-O just to get rid of that trash and Control-L to bring that stuff back down. And so that's just and this kind of looks like the way you would write functions, write macros, let's say. And so maybe I'll just write my macro in that form first, and then I'll show a second way to write the macro. And so maybe this would be a reason to use a macro, because I couldn't figure out how to create a function that I don't have to quote the input list when I'm calling it, which is kind of strange. So we'll just use just call it pop macro. We want to give it a list. And I could just, probably take what I had before, but I need practice anyway. But doing macros, because I haven't really done any of the macro stuff yet. But basically, it's the exact same thing that I was doing before, except for I'm saying defmacro instead of defun, and calling it pop macro instead of pop function, I guess, or pop function BQ. And actually, I'm going to call this one BQ because I want to do one without the back quote. So, so I have the car of the list, and what we want to do is we want to set f the unquoted list to the cdr of the unquoted list, let's say. And then we can say pop macro BQ and pass that nums. And we get 4 back. And if we checked what nums was, we'll see that it's 5. So I got rid of the 4, so that's working correctly. And then also, we can say Control-C, Control-M to macro expand and sly. You could just type that macro expand out if you wanted, if you were inside sly or slime. And then you can see what this comes back to. prog1 car nums, setf nums, cdr nums, which is pretty similar to the way the function was spitting it out without eval. And so anytime you want to see what the macro expands out to, it's Control-C, Control-M. And then right here I hit Q, it'll get rid of that. So this is what the macro looks like. And then I want to write one more macro, and I'm just going to call it defmacro, pop macro, let's say, and then give it a list. And then this time, I'm not going to use the back quoting. So it's kind of strange because this is basically quoting the opposite of what I was doing before. So then we have a list, the cdr of the given list, let's say. And then notice, like here, this whole thing is quoted, so I have to unquote the lists. The input list right here is all I'm really unquoting, right? But if you look over here now, none of the lists are quoted, and it's everything else that I'm having to quote. So it's kind of like backwards versus unquoting and quoting. You can still do these without that. It's just reverse, let's say, of what you had to do before. And then this pop macro, I can feed it nums and then see that the 5 came off. And if I'm to, Control C, Control M this, then you can see it's the same thing. So if I was to come over to pop macro BQ here, I don't know if I can actually do this right here on the fly, but maybe you can see there was no change between these. It's the exact same. It's expanding out to the exact same thing. And now, I guess the benefit of using a macro here versus a function is this right here. There's already a pop inside Common Lisp, so, but if I was just to have it, my pop or whatever, then it acts like normal versus when the function was, I had to quote the input. And then just to show, pop nums, which is the, Common Lisp built in, it's just, having the same effect as before. Ribbit.